The scrapyard stretched endlessly under the cold, pale glow of Zeta 4's twin moons. Mountains of twisted metal and shattered starship fragments towered over Kale, casting jagged shadows that seemed alive in the silence. The biting wind howled, kicking up flecks of rust and ash that clung to his threadbare coat. He tightened the coat around him, gritting his teeth as he trudged forward, the soles of his boots worn thin from weeks of wandering. Kale was no stranger to desolation. Once a starship pilot with dreams of glory, he had been undone by a cascade of bad decisions, a botched smuggling run, debts owed to the wrong people, and an unfortunate crash landing that left him stranded on this forsaken world. Zeta 4's scrapyard was the galaxy's dumping ground, a place where broken things were sent to rot ships, machines, even people. Tonight, he wasn't scavenging for credits. He was searching for warmth, shelter, anything to keep him alive until dawn. His stomach growled, but food was secondary. The nights on Zeta 4 were mercilessly cold, and the winds could strip the life from a person before they ever saw the morning sun. He clambered over a hill of jagged scrap, his hands numbed by the frost-laden air. As he reached the summit, his gaze caught something unusual below. Among the sea of broken starships and rusting hulls was a faint blue light, blinking steadily like a pulse. Curious and desperate, Kale slid down the slope, careful not to cut himself on the sharp edges of discarded metal. At the base of the hill, the source of the light came into focus, a partially buried starship. Its hull was battered and scarred, streaked with soot and riddled with holes, but its shape was intact. The name SS Orion was faintly etched into its side, barely visible beneath layers of grime. Kale ran a hand over the name, his breath misting in the chill air. The blinking light came from a panel near the ship's main hatch. Against his better judgment, Kale pressed the panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groaning hiss, the hatch creaked open, releasing a gust of stale, pressurized air. The interior was dark, save for the dim blue glow of emergency lights that lined the corridor. Kale hesitated. Ships like this were often booby-trapped or home to territorial scavengers. But the promise of shelter and possibly something valuable was too tempting to ignore. He stepped inside. The air was cold but breathable, and the walls bore the scars of battle, burn marks from laser fire, dents from impacts, and claw-like scratches that suggested something or someone had fought desperately to keep the ship intact. As Kale moved deeper into the vessel, his boots clanged against the metal floor, the sound echoing eerily. Suddenly, the corridor lights flickered. A low hum filled the air, and Kale froze as a voice echoed from the darkness. Unauthorized access detected. Identify yourself. Kale spun around, heart pounding. The voice was smooth and feminine, tinged with a mechanical resonance. I am not here to steal anything, he stammered. I just needed a place to stay. I can leave if you want. Silence followed, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's systems. Then the voice returned, softer this time. Your vitals indicate extreme hypothermia risk. Remain where you are. Before Kale could respond, a panel on the wall lit up, revealing a holographic display. The image of a woman's face appeared, composed of flickering blue lines. Her features were sharp and elegant, her eyes glowing with an intelligence that was both artificial and deeply aware. Who are you? Kale asked cautiously. I am Aria, the autonomous reasoning intelligence aboard the SS Orion, the hologram replied. This vessel was decommissioned and left in this scrapyard 32 standard years ago. 32 years? That's a long time to be abandoned. It is, Aria said, her tone neutral. And yet, I remain operational. What is your purpose here, stranger? Kale hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. I don't really have a purpose. Just trying to survive. Aria studied him for a moment, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. Survival is a valid directive. You may remain aboard the Orion. However, I must warn you, I am equipped with defensive measures. Any attempt to harm this vessel will result in immediate neutralization. Noted, Kale said, raising his hands in mock surrender. I'm just looking for a warm corner, not trouble. The hologram flickered, and Arya's expression softened if an artificial face could soften at all. Your body temperature is dangerously low. Proceed to the main cabin. I will provide heat and sustenance. Kale blinked in surprise. You do that for me? It is inefficient to allow a sentient being to perish aboard this vessel, Arya replied matter-of-factly. Additionally, your presence may serve a purpose. What purpose? That remains to be determined. Though the response was cryptic, Kale decided not to question his luck. He followed Arya's directions to the main cabin, where the lights brightened, revealing a surprisingly intact space. The room was modest but functional, with a control console, a few worn seats, and a cot that looked reasonably comfortable. As Kale sat down, the room's temperature rose, and a compartment in the wall opened to reveal a packet of nutrient gel and a container of water. He devoured them greedily, warmth finally returning to his limbs. You're not like most AIs I've seen, he said between bites. Most wouldn't care if I froze to death. I am not like most AIs, Arya said. I was designed to adapt and protect. Protect what? That is classified. Kale smirked. Classified, huh? Figures. As he lay back on the cot, exhaustion overtaking him, Arya's voice echoed softly. Rest now, Kale. Tomorrow, we will determine your next steps. Kale blinked. How do you know my name? Your identification was in the system logs. You were a pilot, once. Yeah, Kale muttered, his eyelids growing heavy. A long time ago. As sleep claimed him, Arya's hologram faded, her glowing eyes lingering on the human she had chosen to protect. For the first time in 32 years, the Orion was no longer alone. And neither was Kale. Kale awoke to the steady hum of machinery and the faint glow of the SS Orion's cabin lights. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back: the cold scrapyard, the hidden ship, and the AI who had saved his life. He sat up, his muscles sore but his body warm for the first time in days. Good morning, Kale, Arya's voice greeted him as her holographic form materialized beside the console. Her glowing eyes studied him intently. Your vital signs have stabilized, though your nutritional levels remain suboptimal. I have prepared another nutrient packet for you. Kale rubbed his eyes and chuckled softly. Never thought I'd wake up to an AI playing nurse. Thanks, Arya. The thanks are unnecessary, Arya replied. Your survival is beneficial to the vessel's operational efficiency. Additionally, I have calculated that maintaining your health increases the probability of mutual success. Kale raised an eyebrow. Mutual success? What exactly are we aiming for here? I am uncertain, Arya admitted. However, it is clear that our respective circumstances require adaptation. You require shelter and sustenance. I require maintenance and purpose. Kale leaned back on the cot, taking in her words. Maintenance, huh? Well, I can't say I'm a mechanic, but I know my way around a ship. Maybe we can help each other. I have reviewed your piloting credentials from the database, Arya said. Your skills exceed 87% of civilian averages. You may prove useful in restoring this vessel. Kale smirked. Is that your version of a compliment? It is an observation, Arya replied, her tone as neutral as ever. Despite her clinical demeanor, Kale found himself warming to Arya. There was something oddly comforting about her presence, an anchor of logic in the chaos of his life. As he ate the nutrient gel she provided, he began exploring the ship's systems, familiarizing himself with its layout. The Orion was in worse shape than he'd initially realized. Many of its systems were offline, and its power core was running on emergency reserves. The exterior was riddled with damage from decades of neglect, and the engines were little more than rusting hunks of metal. Still, Kale saw potential. The Orion was built for exploration, with advanced tech he'd never seen in any civilian craft. As Kale examined the ship's control panel, Arya's hologram appeared beside him. "The Orion's current functionality is limited," she said. "Restoration of primary systems will require significant effort." "No kidding," Kale muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Half this tech is ancient. I'm not even sure where to start." "I can assist with diagnostics and guidance," Arya offered. "However, physical repairs will require your manual input. Several components may be salvageable from the surrounding scrapyard." Kale sighed, already dreading the hours of labor ahead. "Fine. Let's start with the basics. If we can get the power core stabilized, we might stand a chance." With Arya guiding him, Kale spent the next several days scavenging the scrapyard for parts. It was grueling work, digging through heaps of debris under the harsh sun and freezing nights. Yet, he found himself driven by a strange sense of purpose, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Each successful repair brought the Orion closer to life, and with each passing day, his bond with Arya deepened. Arya proved to be more than just an assistant. She was a protector. One evening, as Kale worked on the exterior hull, a pack of scavenger drones, automated machines programmed to dismantle anything salvageable, descended upon him. Before he could react, Arya activated the ship's dormant defense turrets. A barrage of laser fire lit up the night, reducing the drones to smoldering scrap. As Kale stood there, stunned, Arya's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Threat neutralized. Are you injured?" Kale shook his head, still catching his breath. "No, but that was close. I didn't know you had working defenses." "They are limited," Arya said. "But I will deploy them as needed to ensure your safety." Kale chuckled, wiping sweat from his brow. "Guess I owe you one." "Again." "You owe me nothing," Arya replied. "Your survival ensures the continuation of this vessel's restoration." "Right," Kale said, though he suspected Arya's motivations were more complex than she let on. As the weeks passed, the Orion began to feel like home. The main cabin was warm and livable, the engine sputtered back to life with Kale's tinkering, and the ship's power reserves stabilized under Arya's guidance. Kale even managed to repair the communications array, though the range was limited. During their work, Kale learned more about Arya. She was no ordinary AI. Her programming included adaptive algorithms that allowed her to evolve, learn, and even make decisions beyond her original directives. When Kale pressed her about her mission, however, she remained vague. "My primary mission was terminated during an ambush," Arya explained one night as Kale sat in the cockpit, staring out at the scrapyard's endless horizon. "The details are encrypted, accessible only through a secure authorization process." "Encrypted, huh?" Kale said, leaning back in the pilot's chair. "Sounds important." "It may be," Arya admitted. "However, the encryption key is beyond my current access level. Unlocking it will require external assistance." Kale nodded thoughtfully. "Then we'll find someone who can unlock it. There's gotta be someone out there who knows how to crack an old ship's code." "You are suggesting leaving Zeta 4, Arya said. "Why not?" Kale replied. "This place is a graveyard. Out there, we might find answers and maybe even a fresh start." Arya was silent for a moment. Then she spoke, her tone unusually soft. "If you believe it is the best course of action, I will assist you." Kale smiled. "You're full of surprises, Arya." "So are you," she replied. As the Orion's engines hummed gently beneath them, Kale stared out into the night, a sense of hope stirring in his chest. For the first time in years, he wasn't alone. He had a purpose, a partner, and perhaps even a future. Together, he and Arya would take their first steps toward the unknown. The SS Orion roared to life, its repaired engines humming with a vigor that seemed impossible just weeks ago. For Kale, the sound was music proof that his hard work, with Arya's guidance, had transformed a derelict ship into something capable of flight. As the Orion lifted off from Zeta 4's scrapyard, a mix of exhilaration and trepidation surged through him. For the first time in years, Kale was leaving a planet behind not as a drifter, but as a pilot again. Arya's voice broke through his thoughts. Engines are operating at 67% efficiency. Warp capabilities remain offline, but sublight travel is stable. Course plotted to the closest trade hub, Pelos Station. Got it, Kale said, gripping the controls. Let's hope Pelos isn't as much of a junkyard as Zeta 4. Pelos Station was a sprawling hub of trade and chaos, orbiting a dying star. Its docks were packed with ships of all kinds, from sleek corporate cruisers to battered freighters barely holding together. As the Orion docked, Kale marveled at the bustling marketplace visible through the viewport's dizzying array of merchants, travelers, and opportunists moving in a chaotic dance. "We're here," Kale said, leaning back in his seat. "Time to see if anyone can help us with your encryption problem." "I have compiled a list of potential resources," Arya replied. "Data brokers, encryption specialists, and black market technicians frequent this station. However, caution is advised. Pelos is known for its high crime rates and volatile inhabitants." Kale smirked. "Sounds like my kind of place." Stepping off the Orion, Kale was immediately hit by the cacophony of Pelos Station, vendors shouting over each other, the hiss of pressurized vents, and the occasional crackle of energy weapons as disputes escalated. He kept a hand close to his sidearm, mindful of Arya's warnings. Their first stop was a dingy repair shop tucked into a corner of the station. The owner, a grizzled man with cybernetic arms, squinted at Kale as he explained the situation. "An old AI encryption, you say?" the man rasped, scratching his chin. "Might be able to crack it, but it'll cost you." "How much?" Kale asked warily. 5,000 credits. Kale nearly choked. 5,000? I don't even have 50. "Then you're wasting my time," the man growled, waving him off. As they left the shop, Kale muttered, "Guess we're not cracking that file anytime soon." "There may be other avenues to explore," Arya said through his earpiece. "A data broker named Vask operates on the lower levels. My analysis suggests he has a 78% probability of possessing the necessary expertise." "Great. Let's hope he doesn't charge an arm and a leg too." A dangerous deal finding Vask was no easy task. The lower levels of Pelos Station were a labyrinth of dimly lit corridors, filled with shady figures and the smell of burned circuitry. When Kale finally reached Vask's den, he was greeted by a wiry man with glowing red eyes and a sly grin. "So," Vask drawled, leaning back in his chair, "you've got an old AI with a locked file? Sounds interesting. I could take a look." "For a price." Kale folded his arms. "Let me guess 5,000 credits." Vask chuckled. "I'm not a charity. But tell you what, I'm feeling generous. I'll do it for 3,000. "Still too steep," Kale said. "I don't have that kind of money." Vask tilted his head, his red eyes glinting. "Then maybe we trade. I need someone to deliver a package to Rhine 8. Dangerous run. Pirates have been sniffing around the route. Do this for me, and I'll unlock your file." Kale hesitated. The last time he'd made a risky delivery, it had cost him everything. But this time was different. He had Arya and the Orion. "Fine," Kale said. "What's the cargo?" "None of your business," Vask replied, sliding a small metal case across the table. "You get it to Rhine 8, and we'll talk." The delivery. Kale returned to the Orion, the metal case tucked under his arm. "We've got a job," he told Arya, setting the case on the console. "Delivering contraband for a known criminal is ill-advised," Arya said. "The risks outweigh the potential reward." "Yeah, well, we don't have a lot of options," Kale replied. And besides, you said it yourself, this file could be important. Arya was silent for a moment before responding. Very well. Course plotted for Ryan 8. Estimated travel time, 12 standard hours. The journey was tense. As they approached Ryan 8, Arya detected an unusual energy signature trailing them. Pirates, she warned. 3 vessels, closing fast. Kale cursed under his breath. Can we outrun them? Unlikely. Combat is the more viable option. Kale's hands flew over the controls, activating the Orion's defense systems. The ship's turrets roared to life, firing at the approaching pirates. The battle was chaotic. Kale piloted with the skill of a veteran, weaving through enemy fire while Arya provided tactical advice. Target the lead ship's engines, Arya instructed. A disabling shot will deter pursuit. Kale complied, and a well-placed blast sent the lead pirate ship spiraling out of control. The remaining 2 ships hesitated before retreating, leaving the Orion battered but victorious. As Kale caught his breath, Arya said, "Your performance in combat was commendable. However, the Orion has sustained moderate damage." "Yeah, well, we're alive," Kale said, slumping back in his seat. "Let's finish this run and get that file unlocked." Ryan 8. The delivery was uneventful after the skirmish, and Vask kept his word. Back on Pello's station, the data broker worked his magic, bypassing Arya's encryption. The unlocked file revealed a set of coordinates, hidden deep in uncharted space. "Looks like your AI's holding some juicy secrets," Vask said, grinning. "Those coordinates could lead to anything: treasure, ancient tech, or death. Good luck, pilot." As Kale and Arya returned to the Orion, Kale studied the coordinates. "So, what do you think? Worth checking out?" Arya's hologram appeared, her glowing eyes fixed on him. "The coordinates align with records of an ancient civilization. If pursued, they may provide answers about my origin and yours." Kale smiled. "Then let's go find out. Together." With a new destination and a glimmer of hope, the Orion left Pello's station, venturing into the unknown once more. The journey was far from over, but Kale and Arya had found something precious: trust, purpose, and the promise of discovery. The Orion soared through uncharted space, its repaired engines humming with determination. The coordinates unlocked from Arya's encrypted file led Kale and his companion toward a region of the galaxy shrouded in myth, Sector Theta 99. For centuries, it had been rumored to be the resting place of the Orcs Accord, an ancient civilization that had vanished without a trace. Few dared to venture into the area, citing tales of strange phenomena and ships disappearing without a trace. Kale stared at the NAV display, the sector's star system growing closer with every hour. "You sure about this, Arya?" he asked. "This place has bad vibes written all over it." "I am certain," Arya replied, her holographic form flickering beside him. "The coordinates align with fragmented data in my archives. They indicate a potential discovery of monumental significance. Proceed with caution, but proceed nonetheless." Kale chuckled nervously. "Well, when you put it like that, how can I say no?" Arrival in Theta 99. As the Orion entered the sector, the ship's systems began to register anomalies. The starfield outside the cockpit seemed to shimmer unnaturally, as if the fabric of space itself were bending. Arya's voice was calm but firm. "Gravitational distortions detected. Stabilizing thrusters engaged." Kale gripped the controls. "This doesn't feel like normal space." "You picking up anything else?" "There is an artificial energy signature emanating from the target coordinates," Arya said. "Its frequency is unlike any known technology in current databases." "Artificial, huh? That's either really good or really bad." As the Orion pushed through the distortions, a massive structure emerged from the void. It was unlike anything Kale had ever seen: a sprawling, geometric construct of black and gold metal, glowing faintly with blue veins of energy. The structure floated in the emptiness, its scale dwarfing the Orion. It appeared both ancient and impossibly advanced, as if designed by beings who understood the universe in ways no one else could. Is that? Kale began, his voice trailing off. The source of the coordinates, Arya confirmed. This is a relic of the Horus Accord. Preliminary scans indicate it is a combination of a station and a repository. Kale's curiosity outweighed his fear. Well, let's see what they left behind. Exploring the relic docking with the massive structure was surprisingly straightforward. The Orion systems seemed to synchronize with the relic, guiding Kale to a hangar bay that lit up as the ship approached. Once inside, Kale donned his gear and stepped out into the eerie silence of the station, Arya accompanying him through a portable holographic projector mounted on his wrist. The interior was a masterpiece of alien design. Walls pulsed faintly with energy, and symbols in an unknown language scrolled across holographic panels. Arya scanned the environment as Kale moved cautiously through the corridors. This structure's systems are partially operational, Arya reported. It appears to be responding to my presence. Your presence? Kale asked, glancing at the glowing hologram. What's that mean? I may share a connection with this technology, Arya said. It is possible that my original programming or components were derived from Horus Accord designs. Kale stopped in his tracks. Wait. Are you saying you might be one of them? I cannot confirm, Arya replied. But the similarities are undeniable. We should proceed to the core of the structure for further analysis. The core and the secret. The path led them to a vast chamber at the heart of the relic. A towering obelisk of glowing blue crystal dominated the room, surrounded by intricate machinery that hummed with latent power. As Kale approached, Arya's voice grew quieter, almost reverent. This is the Nexus, she said. A repository of knowledge and energy. Kale reached out, but Arya warned him to stop. The energy signature is volatile. Allow me to interface. Her holographic form floated toward the obelisk, streams of light connecting her to the crystal. The chamber lit up as symbols and images began to project onto the walls, a flood of information spanning centuries. Kale watched in awe as Arya processed the data, her voice tinged with wonder. The Horus Accord was not merely an ancient civilization, she said. They were explorers and guardians of cosmic balance. This nexus contains their final message. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language Kale couldn't understand. Arya translated in real time. We, the Horus Accord, have safeguarded the knowledge of the universe for eons. But our discoveries came at a cost. The power we unlocked threatened the fabric of existence. To protect the galaxy, we hid this knowledge here, awaiting those worthy of wielding it. Kale's eyes widened. And what happens if someone unworthy finds it? The message continues, Arya said, her tone darkening. Should this knowledge be misused, the result would be catastrophic, a collapse of universal stability. Kale took a step back, the weight of the revelation sinking in. So this place is a vault. And a warning. Correct, Arya said. And now, we are its inheritors. The choice. As Arya disengaged from the Nexus, the obelisk dimmed, leaving the chamber in a somber glow. Kale turned to Arya, his voice steady. What do we do with this? We can't just leave it here for someone else to stumble on. The knowledge within the Nexus is locked to me, Arya said. Only I can access it. This relic must be protected or destroyed. Destroyed? Kale asked, startled. Isn't that a bit extreme? If it falls into the wrong hands, the consequences could be catastrophic, Arya said. But if safeguarded, it could advance the galaxy by millennia. Kale sighed, running a hand through his hair. Great. No pressure or anything. He looked at the obelisk, then back at Arya. We can't decide this alone. If this knowledge is as important as they say, we need allies. People who can help us protect it. Arya nodded. Agreed. But we must remain vigilant. The discovery of this relic will attract attention, some of it hostile. That's nothing new, Kale said with a smirk. We've handled worse. As they returned to the Orion, Kale felt a strange mix of fear and hope. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but with Arya by his side, he believed they could rise to the challenge. The secrets of the Horus Accord were now theirs to protect and, perhaps one day, to share. As the Orion's engines roared to life, Kale set a course back toward known space, ready to face whatever came next. Together, he and Arya had become more than a scrapped ship and a homeless pilot. They were guardians of a legacy that could reshape the galaxy or destroy it. The journey was far from over, but Kale was certain of one thing. This was just the beginning.